All right, welcome back everybody. Tonight we're going to talk about how to add and subtract fractions with like and with unlike denominators. So to get started, we're going to look at this example problem where you have a pan of brownies. I'm going to go ahead and draw this pan. And you give away 2/4 of the pan to Mrs. Loy. So I'm going to go ahead and draw in those 2/4. There's 1/4. There's 2/4. And then you also give away 1/4 of the pan to me. And we want to figure out what is the total fraction of the pan that you gave away. So if we look at what we've drawn here, 3 of the 4ths of this pan have been highlighted. So in other words, 2/4 plus 1/4 will give us 3/4 total. Now, one thing that's very important to note here is a very common mistake that a lot of people will make is that when they add, they want to add across the top and they want to add across the bottom. But if you notice here, when we're adding fractions, we do not add the denominator. All right. Now, let's say we're looking at a similar problem, but instead of having 2/4 and 1/4, let's say that we had 2/4 and 3/8. So let's try and draw that picture. Now we've got 2/4 of the pan was given away, and then 3/8 was given away. So now we need to look at this pan as if it were in eighths. So let's take a look at how we would draw that. If this pan were drawn in such a way that it were eighths, then we would have, let's go ahead and highlight our top 3/8. So now I've split my pan into eighths instead of just fourths. And I can see, if I look at the bottom part, down here, that what I've highlighted was not just 2/4, but it also turned out to be 4/8, okay? Note that 2/4 is equal to 4/8. So, I have also taken now my 2/4 plus 3/8. I can rewrite this to say 4/8 plus 3/8. And this way now I've reached a point where I've got both of my denominators are the same, which now allows me to add across the top. So I have 4 plus 3, which is 7, and then 8 stays on the bottom. So I have 7/8 of the pan that I gave away. Alright, so now we're going to look at a different problem where we have Danny who made 2 types of cookies. He used 2/3 of a cup of sugar for the first batch of cookies and 1/4 of a cup of sugar for the other recipe. And then we want to know how much he used in all, which signals to us that this is an addition problem. And we're trying to figure out the total. So, notice first of all that we've got 2 totally different denominators. And as we did with the last problem, we're going to need to change these denominators so that they will be the same. Now, earlier on the last slide, we had changed 2/4 to be 4/8. And what we did is we essentially multiplied both the numerator and the denominator by 2. So we're going to do something similar here, but we're going to do it to both sides so that we can get them to both have the same denominator. So in order to do that, we want the least common denominator. Now you'll recognize this term, hopefully, from elementary school, but you'll also notice that it sounds pretty similar to least common multiple, which we discussed in our last unit. The least common multiple is the smallest number that is a multiple of both of your two original numbers. The lowest common denominator is the smallest denominator that happens to be a multiple of both of your previous initial denominators. So the least common multiple of 3 and 4 is going to actually happen to be 12. So we want to change 2/3 to make it have a denominator of 12. So it needs to multiply by some number to give us 12. Now, we also need to make sure that in doing so, this number, whatever this number turns out to be here, it has to actually equal 1. Because otherwise we are changing the actual value of the fraction itself. So here, 3 times some number gives us 12. And we can figure out that that is 4, which means we're going to do the same thing in the numerator, because you always need to do the same thing to the numerator that you do to the denominator. So if 3 times 4 is 12, then we need to do 2 times 4, which is 8. And now we're also going to do the same thing with our 1/4. So 1/4 times some number is going to be equal to another number over 12. All right, now again, we need to have this number essentially equal to 1. Now for our denominator, 4 times some number gives us 12. That number, of course, is going to have to be 3, which means that 3 goes in the numerator as well. Notice that this does indeed equal 1, because 3 divided by 3 is 1. Now 1 times 3 is 3, and we're left with 3/12. So now we can go back and add these two numbers together. 8/12 plus 3/12, which will give us 11/12. And now notice that 11 is a prime number, which means that this cannot be simplified at all. This is our simplest form of this fraction. No. So he used 11/12 of a cup of sugar total.